You know that thing where you're hopelessly in love with your roommate and she brings home a different girl every week and you have to pretend you're asleep while listening to them make out literally 10 feet away from you? No? Just me? Cool. Well, buckle up because this is how I survived the most painful 9 months of my life, living with the hottest girl I've ever seen who wouldn't give me the time of day until suddenly she did. Hold on. Before we get into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you won't miss what is coming next. Let me back up. Freshman year of college, move-in day, August. I'm 18, terrified, and dragging the world's heaviest suitcase up 4 flights of stairs because, of course, the elevator is broken. I finally make it to room 412, sweating through my oversized sweater even though it's like 90 degrees, pushing my glasses at my nose for the 100th time, and I open the door. And there she is, Morgan, my roommate, my future emotional destruction. Standing there in a black tank top and ripped jeans, all confident and gorgeous. And she goes, "Hey, you must be Riley. I'm Morgan. Need help with that?" And I, being the disaster lesbian that I am, dropped my suitcase on my own foot and said, "I'm good," while clearly dying inside. I was not good. I was the opposite of good. Because in that moment, staring at this beautiful girl with dark eyes and the brightest smile, I knew I was completely screwed. Morgan was confident, funny, athletic, and so far out of my league, we weren't even playing the same sport. And me? I was the anxious bookworm who wore oversized sweaters and could barely make eye contact. But I thought, it's fine. We're roommates. We'll be friends. I can handle a little crush. Spoiler alert, I could not handle it. The first week was okay. We unpacked, decorated our sides of the room, talked about classes and majors. She was a sophomore, 19, studying psychology. I was a freshman, studying English Lit. She played intramural soccer. I read romance novels. She went to parties. I went to the library. We were opposites, but we got along really well. Too well. Every time she laughed at one of my jokes, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Every time she'd sprawl in my bed to chat instead of sitting on her own, my heart would race so fast I thought I'd pass out. I was falling hard and fast, and she had absolutely no idea. Then week 2 happened. The first girl. I came back from the library around 10 p.m., opened our door, and Morgan was on her bed making out with some blonde girl from her soccer team. They looked up. Morgan grinned sheepishly and was like, "Oh, hey, Riley, this is Jess. We're just studying." They were absolutely not studying. I mumbled something awkward, grabbed my pajamas, and practically ran to the bathroom to change. When I came back 20 minutes later, Jess was gone, and Morgan was lying on her bed, scrolling through her phone like nothing happened. She looked up and said, "Sorry about that. Hope it wasn't weird." And I said, "No, totally fine," like a liar. It was not fine. It was the opposite of fine, because that's when I realized Morgan dated, like a lot. Week 3, different girl. Week 4, another one. Week 5, back to the first girl. Week 6, someone new. It became this painful routine. I'd come home from class or the library, and there would be Morgan with whomever her date of the week was. Sometimes they'd be watching movies on her bed, sometimes they'd be studying together, and sometimes, most times, they'd be making out and I'd have to pretend to be asleep or busy or literally anywhere else mentally, while my crush kissed other people 10 feet away from me. My best friend Casey, who lived on the hall, thought this was hilarious. We'd be in their room and I'd be having a full crisis, and they'd just laugh and say, "Riley, you need to either tell her how you feel or get over it." But I couldn't do either. How do you tell your straight roommate? Oh yeah, I thought Morgan was straight at this point. We'll get to that. That you're in love with her. You don't. You suffer in silence like a Victorian maiden dying of consumption. That was my strategy. But here's the thing that made it worse. Morgan was actually really nice to me, like genuinely sweet. She'd bring me coffee when she knew I had early classes. She'd leave me little notes on my desk when she left for soccer practice. She always invited me to parties even though I knew I'd say no. Once when I was sick with the flu, she skipped a party to stay in and watch movies with me. She made me soup. Soup! I was dying, not from the flu, from the emotional torture of being cared for by someone I couldn't have.
2 months into the semester, I was sitting in our room reading when Morgan came in and just flopped dramatically on her bed. She groaned and said, "Dating is exhausting." I looked up from my book, some sapphic romance novel, naturally, and was like, "Rough date?" She sat up and said, "Not rough, just, I don't know. I keep going on dates and they're fine, but something's missing. Like, they're all great girls, but I'm not feeling that spark, you know?" And I had to sit there and nod sympathetically while internally screaming because I had that spark with her every single day and she didn't even notice. Then she said something that broke my brain. She said, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm dating the wrong people." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she looked at me with these intense dark eyes and said, "Like, maybe I'm looking for something in all the wrong places." My heart stopped. Did she mean... But then her phone buzzed, and she jumped up and said, "Oh, that's Emma. We're going to dinner. Want me to bring you anything?" And just like that, the moment was gone, and I was alone in our room again, overanalyzing every word she'd said. This is where I should mention that I started keeping a mental list of torture. Moment number 1, the time I walked in on Morgan teaching some girl how to play guitar, sitting really close, hands touching. Moment number 2, when Morgan came home after a date with hickeys on her neck, and I had to pretend I didn't notice. Moment number 3, when she told me in detail about a makeout session with someone because she thought we were just cool like that, and I died inside. The list went on, and on, and on. But before I continue with this absolute disaster of a story, if you're enjoying this and want more, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, it gets so much worse before it gets better. 3 months in, something shifted. Morgan started staying home more. She'd still go on dates, but she'd come back earlier. And she started doing this thing where she'd hang out in our room more, even when she had plans. She'd be getting ready for a date and ask my opinion on her outfit. Every single time. She'd hold up 2 shirts and be like, "Which one?" And I'd have to look at her and tell her which shirt made her look hotter for someone else. It was torture, but I did it because I'm an idiot. Then one night, she came home from a date really early, like 8 p.m. early. She walked in, kicked off her boots, and just sat on my bed, not hers, and sighed. I put down my book and asked, "Bad date?" She shook her head and said, "No, she was great. She's really cool and pretty and smart." I waited. "But," I prompted. She looked at me and said, "But I spent the whole dinner thinking about coming home." I tried not to read into that. I failed. "Why?" I asked. She shrugged and said, "I don't know. I guess I just wanted to hang out here instead. With you. With me! With me!" I almost choked. She noticed my expression and laughed. "Is that weird?" "Sorry, that's probably weird. We always have fun hanging out, and sometimes I'd rather do that than go on dates." I managed to say, "Not weird. I like hanging out with you, too." Understatement of the century. After that night, things got different. Morgan started declining dates. She'd tell people she was busy, and then she'd just hang out in our room with me. We'd watch movies, talk about random stuff, order food. It was like we were dating, except we absolutely were not, because she was still very much bringing other girls around sometimes, and I was still very much dying inside. 4 months into the semester, Casey staged an intervention. They dragged me to the room and said, "Okay, we need to talk about the Morgan situation." I groaned. "There is no Morgan situation. She's straight, and I'm suffering." Casey gave me this look and said, "Riley, she's not straight." I blinked. "What?" Casey said, "She's literally only dated girls since school started. How did you not notice?" I had not noticed. I'd been so busy being sad that she wasn't dating me that I didn't realize she was exclusively dating women. I was the world's most oblivious lesbian. Casey continued, "And also, she's clearly into you." I almost laughed. "No, she's not. If she was into me, she wouldn't be dating everyone else." Casey shook her head and said, "Or maybe she's dating everyone else because she doesn't realize you're an option." I went back to my room with my head spinning. Was Casey right? Was Morgan gay? Was there a chance? But then I walked in and Morgan was on her bed with yet another girl, and I remembered, oh yeah, even if she is gay, she's clearly not interested in me specifically. So I went back to suffering. But I started noticing things, like how Morgan's eyes would follow me when I moved around the room, how she'd find excuses to touch me.
brushing lint off my sweater, adjusting my glasses, playing with my hair when we watched movies. How she'd get weirdly jealous when I mentioned talking to other people. Once, I mentioned that someone from my English class asked me to study together, and Morgan got this look on her face and said, "Are they into you?" I laughed it off, but she pressed, "Seriously, are they?" I said I didn't know, and she said, "Well, are you into them?" I said no, and I swear she looked relieved. 5 months in, Morgan stopped bringing girls home almost entirely. She went on maybe one date in 3 weeks. Instead, she was always in our room, always wanting to hang out, always suggesting we do things together. Movie nights became our thing. We'd get snacks, pile onto one of our beds, usually hers because it was bigger, and watch whatever. One night, we were watching some rom-com, and there was this scene where the characters almost kissed, and I could feel the tension in the air. Not from the movie. Between us. Morgan was lying next to me close enough that our shoulders were touching, and I could feel her looking at me instead of the screen. I turned to ask if she was okay, and her face was right there, inches away, and for a second I thought... But then she looked away and said, "Want more popcorn?" And the moment passed. Again. This became a pattern, these almost moments. Times when we'd be hanging out and something would shift and the air would get heavy, and I'd think, maybe, possibly, but then nothing would happen. It was driving me insane. Casey kept telling me to just say something, but I was terrified. What if I was reading it wrong? What if I ruined our friendship? What if she moved out and I had to live with some random person who didn't bring me coffee or leave me notes or make me laugh every single day? 6 months in, everything changed. It was a Friday night and Morgan had actually gone on a date. First one in weeks. I was in our room reading when she came back around 9 p.m. She walked in, closed the door, and just stood there. I looked up and asked, "How was it?" She didn't answer. She just stared at me with this intense look. Then she said, "Can I ask you something?" I put my book down. "Sure." She walked over and sat on my bed close to me and said, "Do you ever think about us?" My heart stopped. "Us?" I repeated. She nodded. "Like you and me. Do you ever wonder if..." She stopped, shook her head. "Never mind. That's stupid." I grabbed her hand before she could leave. "Morgan, what were you going to say?" She looked at our hands, then at me, and said, "I can't stop thinking about you." I couldn't breathe. She continued, "I've been going on all these dates, trying to figure out why nothing feels right. And then I come home and you're here, and everything feels right. And I don't know what that means, but I think..." She paused. "I think I've been looking for you in all these other people." I just stared at her. She looked scared. "Say something. Please say something, because I'm freaking out, and if I just ruined everything..." I kissed her. I just leaned forward and kissed her, and she made this surprised sound and then kissed me back, and oh my God, it was everything. Her hands came up to cup my face, and mine grabbed her shirt, and we kissed like we'd been wanting to do this forever, which, I had been. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, and she rested her forehead against mine and whispered, "So you feel it too?" I laughed, kind of crying, and said, "Morgan, I've been in love with you since move-in day." She pulled back to look at me, eyes wide. "Since August? Riley, it's February." I nodded. "Yeah, I've been suffering for 6 months, watching you date everyone but me." She looked devastated. "Oh my God, all those times I brought people home." I nodded. "Torture. Absolute torture." She covered her face with her hands. "I'm the worst. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I didn't know you were into girls, and I definitely didn't know you were into me." I raised an eyebrow. "Morgan, I'm the most obvious lesbian on campus. I literally only wear flannel and read sapphic romance novels." She laughed. "Okay, fair. But I thought you were just really into the aesthetic. I didn't think... God, I wasted so much time." I grabbed her face and said, "Hey, we're here now." She smiled, that bright, confident smile, but softer somehow. "We're here now," she repeated, and then she kissed me again. And I melted. We spent the rest of that night on my bed, talking and kissing and laughing at how oblivious we'd both been.
She told me she started realizing something was different around month 3 when she stopped enjoying dates because all she wanted was to come home to me. She said she'd been so confused because she'd never felt this way about a friend before. And it took her months to realize it wasn't friendship. It was more. So much more. Okay, quick pause. If you're loving this story and want to hear more about what happened next, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me your roommate crush stories. Trust me, you're not alone in this suffering. And don't forget to telling us where you are watching from and what's the time right now. The next few weeks were this weird adjustment period. We were dating, but also still roommates, which was honestly amazing. No more going home to an empty room after dates. We were always together. No more pretending to be asleep when she brought someone home, because she wasn't bringing anyone home except herself, and she was mine. But it was also kind of funny because we had to figure out how to be a couple in the same tiny dorm room. Like, do we push our beds together? Do we tell people? What's the protocol? We decided to tell Casey first, since they basically called this whole thing. We walked down to their room holding hands, knocked on the door, and when they opened it and saw us, they just screamed, "Finally!" So loud that half the floor came out to see what was happening. Word spread pretty fast after that. Morgan's soccer team was supportive, but also gave her so much shit for being oblivious for months. My English lit friends were just happy I'd stopped moping. And honestly, people were really cool about it. The best part was how natural everything felt. We had already been basically dating for months. The movie nights, the inside jokes, the constant wanting to be around each other. Now we just got to add kissing and hand-holding and calling each other girlfriend, which made me way too happy every single time. Morgan started calling me her girl in front of people, and I'd just blush and smile and feel like the luckiest person alive. But it wasn't all perfect. Living together while dating meant we had to work through stuff immediately. Like, when we had disagreements, we couldn't just go home and cool off. We were home. The first time we had a real fight, about 2 weeks into dating, it was over something stupid. I don't even remember what. But we argued, and then we were just sitting there in tense silence in this tiny room. And Morgan finally said, "This is weird. We can't exactly storm off." I laughed despite being mad, and she laughed too, and we talked it out. We made a rule after that. No going to bed angry. We'd stay up and work through things because we lived together, and we couldn't afford to let stuff fester. 3 months into our relationship, Morgan did something that made me cry. Good crying, not sad crying. She'd been acting weird all day, secretive and smiley. When I came back from class, she'd completely rearranged our room. She'd pushed our beds together to make one big bed, hung string lights above it, and put up photos of us all over the walls. She was sitting there, looking nervous, and she said, "I know we basically live together already, but I wanted it to feel more like our space, not just 2 roommates. Our space. Is this okay?" I definitely cried. I kissed her and told her it was perfect. That night, we fell asleep in our combined bed, her arms around me, and I remember thinking this was worth every single second of suffering I had gone through. Of course, Casey and our friends teased us mercilessly. They'd make jokes about how we speed ran the relationship process, living together before even having a first date. But honestly, I wouldn't change it. Getting to wake up next to her every morning, seeing her sleepy and soft before she puts on her confident face for the world, having someone who knows all my weird habits and loves me anyway, it was everything. By the end of freshman year, we'd been together 4 months, and we had to figure out summer plans. Morgan was from 3 states away, and I was 2 hours from campus. The thought of being apart made me physically ill. But then Morgan suggested something crazy. She said, "What if we got an apartment for sophomore year? Just you and me. No dorm, no RAs, our own space." I stared at her. "You want to move in with me? Like, for real, move in together?" She nodded. "Riley, we already live together. I just want to make it official. Plus, I really don't want to spend the summer without you." We found a tiny apartment near campus, signed the lease, and spent that summer texting constantly, counting down days until we could be together again. Sophomore year started, and moving into our apartment was chaotic, but perfect.
We got to decorate however we wanted, cook our own meals, have our own space that was just ours. No more quiet hours or RAs or thin walls. Morgan's soccer schedule was intense, and my classes were harder, but coming home to each other every day made everything better. We learned how to really live together, splitting chores, managing money, navigating each other's moods and stress. It wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. Now we're 6 months into sophomore year, over a year into our relationship, and I still can't believe this is my life. The girl I had a hopeless crush on, who brought home different people every week while I suffered in silence, is now my girlfriend. She still brings me coffee. She still leaves me notes, but now she also kisses me goodbye before soccer practice. She calls me her girl. She tells me she loves me every single day. And I don't have to pretend to be asleep or busy or anywhere else. I get to be right here with her, exactly where I belong. So yeah, if you're suffering through a roommate crush right now, wondering if they'll ever notice you, wondering if you should say something or keep quiet, take it from someone who waited 6 months in absolute agony. Say something. The worst thing that can happen is you get a no and have to find a new roommate. The best thing that can happen is you get the girl. And trust me, the girl is worth it. Every single second of torture was worth it for the way Morgan looks at me now like I'm the only person in the world who matters. They say you shouldn't date your roommate because if it goes wrong, you're stuck living together. But what they don't tell you is that when it goes right, you get to fall asleep next to your favorite person every single night. And that's pretty much the best thing ever.